Thanks for tuning in to Revolutionary Lumpen Radio. In this episode, we've got an extremely fun episode for you with Tripp. You probably know them as Anti-Loan Action off Twitter. We do go into what that anti-loan action means, as well as being anti-housing association. But the main premise of the episode is socialism is not when the government does stuff. Just want to note that we did have to turn to plan B for recording, so the audio quality is not as good as we would have liked. But despite that, I really do think that you're going to love this episode. I shouldn't really be saying this, but I dare say that this was actually one of our most fun episodes ever. It was even so fun that we had a bit of a discussion before the episode officially started. We did leave in some of that chat, so you could see what we were talking about. But if you want the full thing unedited, you can find it on our Patreon at patreon.com/lumpenpodcast. Follow us on Twitter at lumpen_radio. Find our website, lumpen.libsyn.com. Huge love and solidarity to our Patreon supporters: Jake, Joe, Rev Left, Jim, John, Grego, Oren, Slaughterhound, my mate Steve, got Gemma, Kate, Mary, Saville, or Saville, excuse me, and Sharky. Without further ado, let's go into it now, starting with the bonus content. If you want socialism, join the army.
It's absurd. It's so absurd, and it's still.
it's like peak insanity, like the literal imperialist force. Wow.
Oh, that reminds me of the tweet that actually enabled me to see your video that you replied to, the one about the military's the biggest communist party or something. Do you remember that? The one that you replied the video to. That's the tweet that you replied to that enabled me to see the video for the first time. That's how that's how I knew that you replied. I think someone that I knew retweeted it or something. I was literally just watching it on repeat for an hour. It was hilarious.
I was not intending for that one to, even go, quote unquote viral in the left sphere of the internet. I'm not sure even how to say it, Twitter or just the general area. I was not expecting the response, and I'm so glad that it's so evergreen that you can see, plug into different replies, and that's how it continues living after the fact. I think that's hilarious, and people tag me all the time when they use it.
For sure.
I think that we're talking some serious goodness here that should be in the episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is basically the podcast conversation now. So we can just kick it off now if you want.
We should just really go. Are we ready? Do you think that we should go now?
Okay.
Ryan, you got to join in on this karaoke. This is what the people want. This is why we've got a Patreon. This is for goodness. This is for people's health that we're doing this, for literally for the mental health. You gotta join in karaoke, Bo.
We could.
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
We shall, right. Could I get the lyrics, please?
Oh yes, absolutely. The thing is, I actually never wrote them down, so I'm my fingers
transcribing it.
Right.
I'm transcribing everything. It's because it just kind of I don't know. I had a fever dream, and it just kind of erupted out of me, and I never bothered to record any of it except through TikTok, and that's how it's been for the last few months. So if you would allow me just a few more minutes,
sure.
Just a couple seconds to continue writing on.
All the time you need.
I'll give you 10 times that if it means you don't have to strain your fingers.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
There's just so many videos now of Maradona meeting Fidel and Che in Cuba. I didn't even know. Dude, I have some awesome banana bread, but I made it with currants.
Oh, nice.
And I fucking hate currants, so I don't know what I was thinking, but I put a load of currants in it. I don't even like currants. I don't know why I did this. I don't know.
Was you trying to think this is healthy and this would be good for me? I can do this, and then you never. Currants are good.
I know, but I hate them.
Well, they don't hate you. Let them just enter your body and then do the goodness, because it's good for your body.
I don't like you telling me to let things enter me.
Everything's a part of us, Ryan. We're a part of everything else.
Sometimes my Twitter feed just gets so wholesome. Now it's just filled with like pictures of Maradona, Che, and Castro. I like it. This sucks. Why do I only have to find out about these things about people after they die?
Why indeed?
That's how I found out about Dr. Alexander Shulgin. We should do a video on him. I literally found out about his existence as he died. Like, because he died. Like, he made headlines, and I found out about who he was because he died.
Okay, I think I've finally managed to type this out. Let's go.
Whoop, whoop.
Let's go. I am so sorry.
When do you want to do it? Do you want to do it at the start, at the end, in the middle, spontaneously?
You could do it. You could do it spontaneously, you know, or even like towards the end, you know, as a show, as a, you know, a send off, goodbye.
Yeah, we can end with it for sure. We can end with it. That would be cool. Like as a like a sending off.
Yeah. So that is the basic structure.
Oh, that'd be so good though, because we always have like a song at the end of an episode, so this time it'll be yours.
Yay! I actually was introduced to you guys through an episode of Rev Left Radio, I believe, when I believe you guys was with Brett at one point. If I'm misremembering that, I'm not sure. It was either that or you collabed with somebody else. Either way, that's how I, was found out about the sister show, or at least the one that was being recorded across the pond. And I was like, oh, okay, that's great. Because awesome. I never really, yeah. So
honestly, I have no idea how we managed to get that interview with Brett. To be honest, like I still don't know how we managed to do that. To be honest,
Brett's my mate. That's how.
Yeah, but I still don't know. I get it.
He's beloved. He's been like by my side for a while. He's a
I hear you. I still don't know how you made it happen.
And also because this podcast's heavy. That's why Brett's the man, because like there's more to life than just politics in it.
I told you about me being in random subreddits, right? And people just post that video, and I'm just like, oh, that's my video, like. One from my YouTube channel.
But
like,
this is nothing compared to the plan. Like I'm saying, we've got to get him onto like Russell Brand's podcast, and then he's got to go on to Joe Rogan. Like this is all possible within our lifetime. So we've got to literally do all this. We've all got to like get that exposure so that we can actually get the support from other people. So we're supporting each other, and then we can actually base build, and then we can actually have editorial in like city centres where people can go to and learn from each other and learn what communism at any time. And it's not just people out with stands, people who've got bases, and sometimes we literally this is what we're gonna do in a lifetime. And like it's just that's the plan. That's
no one can say you don't have ambition, I suppose.
Yeah,
but like it's not even me. It's just the people. This is like what we've got to do. It's like shit. I'd rather not have to, obviously, but the revolution's got to come first. Is it a crescendo when you're singing a harmony? What's that called?
That would be a harmony.
A harmony.
So it's the harmony of public schools.
Yeah,
roads,
we sing
firefighters, welfare.
Yes, and it kind of tapers off at the end. The last stanza or what have you. You could you could sing that line till the end of eternity and it will still ring true. That's what I was intending for there, but we could just stop at the last one.
So I'm thinking, me and Ryan don't butcher the song. Maybe we do the harmony and then the last four socialisms, not when the government does stuff.
Yes.
How is that?
I am all for that.
You're for it, Ryan.
What's up? Yeah, for sure.
So we're coming in public schools, roads, firefighters, welfare.
I got distracted by a Twitter thing. Some right wingers complaining about politicizing the Holocaust, and I'm losing brain cells reading it.
My gosh.
What do these people think politics is? I'm really confused. Like people say, like, don't politicize the military, don't politicize the Holocaust. It's like, what is politics to you? Like, what do you think politics is? If those things aren't political, like, what? How do you understand the world around you? Like, I don't get it.
it's a completely different world, it seems.
It's very strange.
But they always act like they've all got it figured out. I actually don't. Where are y'all, like, where are y'all both from? That's like the only thing that I don't know. I know you guys are, just neighbors almost, but like what part of...
Yeah, we're in England, but Shibby's north and I'm south. So, like, he's in Liverpool and I'm, like, south coast. So we, like...
okay.
We're basically opposite ends of the country.
I was going to say, like, it seems difficult, having to record everybody at the bot that you're using.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that's all it was.
We're on the same time zone, though, so that helps, I guess.
This is so funny. I never even considered, like, talking on any, sort of podcast, because it seems like it's so much work, or like, developing one or anything. I really appreciate what you guys have going on. As with any, podcast, it actually adds, nuance and, education to the ongoing discourse, like in the cesspool and everything else that's going on. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I really hope that this is, this does offer a bit of a reprieve from everything, especially with this, not even just COVID, but at least here in America, everybody's been a bit, like their brain's been fried because of the last month or so. I really do hope this, is a bit of a reprieve.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
For sure.
Nobody likes being burned out.
Definitely.
Also, I do apologize for my spotty communication. That's
no need to be sorry.
I appreciate that. I really do need to be better about that, because I've opening up communication slowly but surely, and that is something I do need to work on. But
I wouldn't worry about it, honestly. No matter how bad you think you are, Shibby is worse with communication. Like, even with me, I can message him and he won't even get back to me in hours. Like,
I've got to ask, like, what is your background? Like, do you have, like, as far as, did you ever go to university, or like, what did you study if you did go?
Yeah, I did. I just got out last year. I did cybersecurity management, but like, nothing is related to anything that I'm doing now, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like, I can talk about it for sure, but it's like so completely unrelated, really.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not interesting. I wish I went for, like, I don't know. I was going to say poli-sci, but then I realized that those courses are probably terrible, so like, I wish I did some kind of like politics related thing, but I really didn't.
And I considered political science, briefly. I feel like I dodged a bit of a bullet.
That's what people tell me. I mean, I think that's mostly an American thing. Like, we don't even have political science over here. We have like international relations and stuff. But from what people tell me of the course or the subject, it's fairly terrible. It's very it's a very what people have told me about taking political science, that it's a lot of dissecting propaganda. Yeah, I've seen pages of the syllabus and it's just like, oh wow, like I could not survive this.
Yeah, especially knowing what I know now, like, let alone before I was matured in my political education outside of the confines of bourgeois education. That would have been a headache to go through. I would have needed it. But yeah, no, as of right now, I'm doing legal studies, which isn't much better as far as a degree is concerned, where you have to navigate that sort of thing. But at least what I want to do with it is, I won't be stuck.
Hope so.
Yeah. But that's really interesting. I didn't know that, that as a course didn't exist outside of America. I mean, I'm not surprised, but it makes sense. Hello.
Yeah, we have strange things over here as well. I mean, the UK just passed, like, a month or so ago, they just made it illegal for any schools to teach, like, anti-capitalist material. So that's the thing that happened.
Oh, I read about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, they're trying to do this. Well, they were trying to do the same thing here. I'm not sure what the next administration will do. in terms of that. But yeah, they were close to implementing that sort of thing, I think.
It's just strange how obviously the right wing's going to scream about everyone being taught Marxism in schools, and then meanwhile it's like illegal for them to do that in schools.
It's absurd. Like these are left wing institutions. They're teaching you Marxism. Like what school are you going to? Where can I enroll?
Violation of Palestinian human rights through investment and support of the land trade.
It's not that some people are just too dumb to understand it. I mean, that's complete nonsense, right? It can be taught to anyone. It is intuitive to some degree, and it's not like an intelligence thing.
And, we had some placards, one of them which said the pretty factual point that Zionism is racism.
It's not just a moral stand, it's a political stand. What you're talking about is the role that Israel plays securing the interests of US and British imperialism in the Middle East.
And I would be talking about Iraq or Afghanistan or something today where I am, and I understand these conflicts that have literally been going on since I was born. It's just horrifying.
It's not British culture, it's just the world's culture. They love stories, they love this idea that there is this nation that looks like this. I think it's a distraction from the class struggle, to be honest.
Welcome to Revolutionary Lumpen Radio. So we're made up to have you on the show, Tripp, to discuss this topic that you could say that you've been quite vocal about in the past, spreading the truth that socialism is not when the government does stuff. Before we go into this and your experience from going viral from your TikTok video, we always love to get to know our guest on the show. So can we just ask you to introduce yourself, such as your background, what brought you to the left, your political tendency, any organizations you've worked with? Anything like that would be great before we go into the rest of the subject matter. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm Tripp. I use they, them pronouns. There's really not much to say about myself, I think, other than I'm a Black legal studies student right here in Georgia in the belly of the beast. Like a lot of the people that I've come across the last 4 years, I'm a part of the 2016 presidential election pipeline, as I like to say. That was my first exposure to, progressive politics, electoral politics. And I slowly, but quite steadily, I would say, progressed from there. As of today, I consider myself a learning Marxist-Leninist. I like to tag that prefix, learning, to my tendency, only because it's the truth. I'm still pretty young in my political education, comparatively speaking. But that is the tendency that I have gravitated most towards, and I feel is the most effective for bringing about communism. So as part of what supplemented my political education so far was the time that I spent as a candidate for the Party for Socialism and Liberation here in America. And I have nothing but positive things to say about my time there, but unfortunately I felt it's best to part ways because of school and work. And the requirement to effectively work within the organization, living in, a semi-rural area, it was very difficult being one person. And you're not really able to organize effectively just as one person if you're not able to dedicate all of your time to that work. So I parted ways very amicably. I still have comrades in that organization. And as of right now, I do volunteer work when I can with La Suya, which is the Student Undocumented Youth Alliance that's here in Savannah. And I offer my time when I can. I go to actions when I'm able to, but that's about the extent of what I'm doing right now. I'm focusing on completing my degree. And I'm hoping after I'm finished with my degree, I can go back into putting into the work and building dual power here. So that's me. Awesome. Thank y'all for having me on, of course. And I really appreciate what y'all are doing here.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. I love that you say, learning. I think no matter how far along in your, sort of education of Marxism, I think everyone should always prefix learning, right? Because no matter how much you know or think you can always perpetually learn more, essentially. So I think everyone should always refer to themselves as learning, because you never, knowledge is never a destination, right? You never I've arrived now, I finished. That's not really how knowledge works. It's a perpetual thing, and you will forever be learning, ultimately.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, I don't want to be seen as an authority figure on a subject, that's precarious position. You could always be wrong. And having gotten a bit of an audience now, because of that video and everything, I want to, make sure hey, please do not listen to, to only what I'm saying. Please read. please read, please learn from your other comrades, and please engage with politics, not exclusively in an online sphere. That's never an effective way to bolster that political education. But yeah, I absolutely agree. We're always constantly learning, and we need to, know that, and, self-critique and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's also a sort of weirdly paradoxical thing, right? Like the people who say that they know things are usually the ones that don't, right? And it's the people that know they don't know anything that actually know a couple things, right? So it's a really strange dynamic where you should probably listen to the people that are telling you they don't really know anything because they're more likely to be honest about what they do and don't know. It's a really strange thing.
And on that learning, being a legal student in the belly of the beast, or you described the black legal student in the belly of the beast, can I actually ask you about two things? Like, what is it you plan to do as a legal student in the belly of the beast differently than somebody who is, just a liberal? And is being a black legal student that different? And is it that different being black? Would you mind actually talking about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What I want to do later on, after I finish my degree, I want to continue my degree. I want to get an additional one. And my prospect is law school. But what I want to do with my degree, I want to go into environmental law. That is my goal. I want to work with environmental regulations and make sure that, nobody's pumping chemicals where they're not supposed to, because environmental justice and racial justice, I feel, are two completely intertwined struggles. And they have been ever since the civil rights movement. It's a very long tradition and it's a very long struggle. And I want to continue that. So that's, I guess that, maybe differentiates myself from other, liberals, because a lot of people go into this profession for a monetary purpose. They know that, this could be a quite lucrative career, and that is the primary reason why they go in. They don't want to go in to help people, or they want to go in to defend a corporation, business law, corporate law. That's not my end goal here. I want to work exclusively with the communities that are being affected by these corporations. And being a Black legal studies student, I would say there's not really a lot of, I would say, representation in this field that I'm going into. And there's a lot of competition as well. And, as someone of my background, and also someone, being perceived as, the way that I am, it's, I know that, what I'm going to, it's going to be very cutthroat, and, there's going to be it's going to be very hard just going through law school. So that's what I'm preparing myself for. And, the resources that I need to compile, I need to be very diligent in that I'm not being shorted what is due, that, all the opportunities are being afforded to me as anybody else would, anybody that be white, for example. But that is my primary goal. It's not something that I came into organically. I never, grew up thinking, I want to go into law. That wasn't my intention at all. It was actually directly after the 2016 presidential election that I realized that there is something larger going on here, and something very urgent going on here. I was 18 at the time. I wasn't, really, politically conscious beyond my family voting Democrat. But after the 2016 election, I, was able to hone on, what the problems in society were. Like, they had a name now, it was, it had a name now. And it was so devastating, realizing that. But it was also like, I could perhaps lend my assistance to, there's people that say that climate change is a losing battle and we just need to prepare for the worst. There's other people that say we still have time. I peg myself as a bit of an optimist, if not an idealist. And I want to, give what I have to stop the inevitable.
Yeah, nobody can see into the future. Like, I think it's an amazing work that you plan to go out for, like, eco law, environmental protection through legal means, and helping out where you can in the environmental movement. Nobody with any sense could ever knock you for doing that. That's just an amazing work, and I do wish you all the best in that. Interesting in the 2016 election with Barack Obama, as much as people knock him and knock these electoral imperialists, that they do actually bring out some kind of progressiveness in people. But that could always just be down to the material conditions in society, and just might not take much to push people over.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I get kind of nervous when I hear people say that, because that's often used as sort of a reasoning for accelerationism. And I really hate accelerationism. Like, it annoys me so much, right? Like,
what's that?
So accelerationism is the idea that, like, what we actually have to do is accelerate the contradictions within capitalism so that it falls apart quicker, so that people will, organize and rally quicker. Right, there are left-wing accelerationists who are literally like advocating for voting Trump because it would make things a lot worse. So that the idea is like you make things better by making things worse. And I hate the idea so much for a number of reasons. But primarily, like, it's definitionally a position of privilege, right? Because if you are a person advocating for, heightening the contradictions of capitalism, chances are you're not one of the people that are going to be impacted by that greatly. Right, chances are you're not someone who's like one paycheck from being kicked out of the house or something, right? So I think it's sort of definitionally a position of privilege. But you're right. I mean, electoral politics does definitely radicalize people. There's no doubt about that. But no one should be, advocating for the worst in bourgeois electoralism such that we can, get more revolutionaries.
Well said, Ryan. Tripp. So now that you did become more radicalized and you talked to like Marxism to bring about communism, and you also talked about one person organizing not being like a sustainable model for revolution, did you also educate yourself, or did you, how did your education come across?
Oh yeah, like my time in the PSL, that was really only supplementary as far as my political education went. I, started reading, I started listening to audiobooks and lectures, and I started with a study guide, actually, a source that I stumbled across that helped me out, just tremendously, because I had no idea where to start. People, were saying, start with, state and revolution, start with this, start with that. And I actually did start with state and revolution, but I ended up going further and reading Fanon and Rodney. And also what's actually kept me from drifting to, one tendency or the other was the fact that there's such a rich tradition of Marxist-Leninist practice here in America, the Black Panther Party. Yeah, I didn't know that. I did not know that they were communists.
No, there's loads, yeah.
They don't teach you this in school. They don't teach you about Sata Shakur. They don't teach you about Fred Hampton. They don't teach you about Du Bois or any of these people.
Angela Davis.
Angela Davis, didn't know about her at all. I had no idea. They don't teach you because, their politics is so intertwined with who they are. And they're like, what if they find out that they're socialists? Right. What if they find out they're communists? We can't have that. So they teach you the very sanitized version of history. They taught us that, Martin Luther King was this very nice man who wanted civil rights. That was about the extent of what I got in elementary school and high school. But after people were telling me, did you know, most of the revolutionaries that you've heard about growing up, they had class consciousness. They were, talking about racial inequality as well as wealth inequality. And that blew my mind how dedicated the education system is to suppressing that information.
For sure. And that also solidifies that concept that Lenin was talking about, right? About all revolutionaries being stripped of revolutionary potential and then sold back to the masses, right? So you get to learn about all these people. You just don't get to learn anything about, the revolutionary potential of them.
Yeah, and the fact that he wrote that so long ago and it's still relevant today, and they're already doing it. It is amazing to me, and it's disgusting and it's infuriating, but it's amazing. He already predicted this, and that definitely what made me. That definitely kept me in the path, because it's just he knew what he was talking about. You read it, and it's like, yeah, he completely understands the material conditions that's actually happening today, and there was no going back after that. I don't know. That was my little rabbit hole there.
It's an experience so many have shared. We thought that it'd be good to talk about how this episode came to be.
I sort of briefly touched on this before the episode started, right? But I think there was some kind of tweet online about, someone was tweeting something about, you can't speak to any member of the military about communism being bad because they're literally a member of the largest communist party in the United States or something ridiculous like this. And then it was either yourself or someone else replied with your video to that tweet. And at that point, I just watched it for like an hour. I just kept repeating it, and I was just singing along. And then I messaged it to Shibby, and I was like, "Look at this!" And then me and him just sort of were singing along to it and having a good laugh for ages about it. Yeah, so I think that basically is how the episode came to be, honestly.
But like, what's funny about it is Ryan was like, oh, it's catchy, it's fun.
Oh yeah, I can probably find those messages now.
Oh, look at it, like our messages are golden.
Yeah, I can probably find it.
But I said, oh yeah, it'd be so good to get them on and talk about their experiences. But then Ryan was like, not everything has to be like a podcast. But I think that Ryan was doubting that you'd actually come on and speak to us, but like so was I as well. But like at this point I was like that, like I was in love with you, that it was just like, oh, I've got to speak to this person. They're just amazing for what they've done, and they'd just be so interesting to speak to. And I think that like my Twitter message probably said something along those lines.
Yeah,
so, like,
you said it, tell me if this sounds mad, if this sounds crazy. And it did sound crazy. I'm not even gonna lie, but but I recognized y'all, and I was like, okay, what the hell? I don't mind talking about this.
Oh yeah, I remember now. Yeah, but look, again, it just really shows people what people power is. It's like comrades coming together, and we're not all capitalist out here just doing things for ego and all of this. It's like, this is really going to be good, and we hope that people appreciate you coming on and then speaking to us about this subject and then tying in what you've done with our project here. My life is dope and I do dope shit. Moving on, we'll talk more about your TikTok video specifically, but like, I personally wonder this, like, did you have a background in music before you made this video? The editing's really good, like it's proper catchy. You've clearly like planned this out like a direct in your head. Like I wouldn't be surprised if you use storyboards because of like how well edited it is. Like you're moving your finger, you're pointing up to text coming up here, but like everything's on beat at the same time.
Oh, yeah. So, like, I guess I could say that I have a quote-unquote background in music. It would be more accurate to say kind of up around it, in a sense. I think everybody, I grew up in the choir. I was raised Southern Baptist, so I was in the choir. I played violin in elementary school. I, graduated to play an oboe throughout middle school and high school. And, I have family that, is sort of involved in the music business. But it's always been a hobby for me more than a pathway. It's always been a hobby. It's something that's always made me happy to do. So it remains that to this day. And that's about the extent of that.
Well, like, with that being said, like, did you consciously decide to make a video for class consciousness? How did that happen?
I think the phrase socialism is when the government does stuff has achieved, meme status among other socialists because of how absurd it is. But the thing is, people genuinely believe that. So it was late at night when I was just dicking around on TikTok, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make some music. We're gonna make this happen. And again, I really don't remember the process of making it because it came out it just kind of came out of me. I never even wrote the lyrics down. I was just like, you're repeating stuff in my head until it sort of sounded like it made sense, and it sounded annoying enough, but it was also catchy. So like I had to straddle that line, and it only has 2 chords throughout the entire song. It was easy as hell. And the thing about TikTok, it's very user friendly. That's why you're seeing, grandparents, like everybody and their grandmother using the app because it's so user friendly. So the editing wasn't, difficult to do. The transitions were all like, features that were already within the app. It wasn't like I was, going in and editing everything meticulously. It was already there. And that's what made the, those videos so easy to make. But yeah, I was really just like, this is going to sound great. And I uploaded it, and it actually didn't get much traction on TikTok at first. So I re-uploaded it to Twitter, but I figured somebody out there might like it, That was my thought process then. And then it blew up. So the rest is history.
It did. Did you also like transfer some of your own personality on there, or are you just kind of like an actor as well? Because the moments where you just stood there with your hands on your forehead, just thinking like, oh, what's going on here? Like, that's genius. Some of your actions on there is just genius.
Let's be real, the arms are the best bit. Like the rave. Come on, that cracked me up so many times.
I was just like, how many, because there's so many features you can use within the app. Like, how many like weird transitions can I use? And I was like, I gotta have a party at some point in this video. Like, we're all dancing, we're all dancing to the chorus, right? So that's.
It was hilarious.
That's how I enjoyed that part, because I really enjoyed filming it. It was frustrating at some bits, like getting the music to line up with the video itself, but everything else was great. Everything else was fine.
Yeah.
You got your cat in, like, a bit famous too. So like, what kind of response did you get when you made the video, and like, how did that actually compare to your expectations?
Like I said, at first I didn't get much traction on TikTok. I'm not really on TikTok anymore. I'm not sure what the algorithm is like, but it didn't really, get much traction. But when I posted it on Twitter, I started getting mad DMs from people.
Why? What were the DMs saying?
Like, George Smits from Stick to Your Guns somehow found that video and DM'd me. It was like, we need to go on a tour with this. And I thought he was joking, but like, he followed me on the main band account.
Who's that?
George Smits. He's Stick to Your Guns. It's a metal rock band, actually, and it's very
see, like he felt what I felt when like he saw that video. He was just like, everybody needs to see this, everybody needs to hear this.
Yeah,
no doubt.
It was amazing. I was like, hi, first of all, hi, thanks for talking about me, and thanks for talking to me, thanks for sharing my video. I don't know what to say to you, because obviously you're way more professed in your musical talents than I am, but I really appreciate the fact that you like this little earworm. And I was like, there needs to be a whole series of these songs. That was the main reaction to this. I was like, when are you making another one, right? And
what's the answer?
Well, I was wondering this myself.
Well, at first I was like, yeah, I'm working on something. Yeah, I didn't want to say anything and not be.
Oh,
but I am going to be working on a few more things. Mostly talking about like certain, just simple concepts that could be easily translated into a little ditty, song wise. I have nothing to share with y'all today, but that is in the works. I've been asked it so many times. I never wanted to say anything until I guess right now. But yeah, I have heavily considered it, and yeah, I'm going to be recording some things professionally. I have like sound recording equipment now instead of just using my cell phone, so
exclusive interview.
Definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, certainly.
So yeah, and also that, and perhaps a couple of collaborations. So that's where we're going after this, and I'm very excited to do this. And I think I've a bit of a contrast between schoolhouse rock and communist schoolhouse rock.
So is this metal version going to come out, or?
I will have to talk to George about that. The metal version. Like this is before like the COVID-19 hit, and this is before COVID-19 hit like super hard here in the States. So unfortunately, I'm not sure when we're actually going to be able to make an in-person collaboration, but we have DM each other after the fact, and we're like, yeah, we're still thinking about making music together. So I can't wait for that. It's literally I never really even considered like making music in a professional environment, so I'm excited for that. I'm really excited for that experience. But yeah, the reaction was it was pretty great. Everybody was really positive about it. I got some people trying to argue with me over the premise of the song itself. It's like, first of all, socialism is when the government does stuff.
Don't you just love those people?
I love those people. It's like, I can't argue with you in a Twitter comments. Okay, right. I presented my argument.
You should have. Yeah, I was going to say, you should have just linked them the video.
You need to watch it again.
Yeah, I think you missed the point.
Well, that just pretty much leads on to the next point. Like, this premise that socialism's not when the government does stuff. I think it would be great if all of us together, we discussed like just what this means. And like one way we can do that is to ask ourselves, why would people think that roads, public schools, these things are socialism? and then we can move on to like ask like why that's a bad thing. Is it all down to like a matter of education or misinformation, or are there ideological reasons for people thinking that socialism's when the government does stuff? Like, what do you think, Tripp?
Yeah, I think there's historical precedent to this, like Bernie was going back to 2016, the 2016 campaign, the Sanders campaign was a huge, at least in the sense of fairly recent memory, the repopularization of the word socialism. Like this was the first time that people are hearing the word socialism and, seeing positive associations with it. But it's also false associations that, the campaign asserted, and, like socialism means, free healthcare. Socialism means, free public education. Socialism means, taxing the rich. And that's what socialism is. And then, that campaign pointed to Nordic countries like, Denmark and Norway. Like that's socialism, that's democratic socialism. That, created a wall for, I think for a lot of people, like that's where, people stop trying to learn more. And then he's not the first person to present socialism as something that it's not. Even back in, the 60s, Andrew Young and Martin Luther King, they also reiterated the phrase socialism for the rich and free enterprise capitalism for the poor. That was a line that was, used throughout the civil rights movement. And, even going before that, there were people that asserted that, socialism could be achieved through revolutionary means, that it could be done through incremental change, that it could be done through, the system itself. And that's just so flawed and wrong and ahistorical. But the argument continues to persist. The mythos continues to persist. And I think it's very, it's partly that, and it's also the purposeful lack of education or just the omitting of education on, what socialism actually is in Western countries. Western countries whose values center around anti-communism, So that's, part of what I think is the reason why people conflate social safety nets and taxing the rich with being, socialist institutions, socialism itself, rather than thinking that it is, transitionary period between capitalism and communism. And the goal is to eliminate, capitalism and, establish a workers' state and decommodify necessities, excuse me. So I guess that's sort of my thoughts on it. I think it's mostly that. And, maybe just the rampant misinformation, that we were exposed to from childhood, I think. And it's really hard to conditioning.
For sure. It's still a mystery to me today as to why Bernie would do that, right? Because everyone knows he knows better, right? Like, there's no way he actually thinks that's what socialism is, right? I mean, the dude's been in the Senate for 50 years. He's over 70. So he's been in the Senate since 1970, right? Like, he's been to the USSR, right? There's no way he actually thinks that, these things that he says, right? So it really is a mystery to me. I don't know why he would. I mean, it has to be deliberate, right, at that point.
Oh, yeah, I believe it's very deliberate. I mean, of course, he, denounced Castro, as a raging dictator during the 2016 campaign. And he did it again during 2020, I believe, when it regards to Venezuela. And I believe it's very purposeful. There is no way. He continually distances himself as a politician away from, the scary communist countries, the Soviet Union and what was the Soviet Union and Cuba and, socialist projects across the world, and aligns himself with, the capitalist interests. That's what he did in 2016 and that's what he did in 2020. So it's not a surprise to me at all, but it's because of, that and the DSA. Well, not solely because of that, but it definitely contributed to how people view socialism today. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, it also goes to show, right, the limits of bourgeois electoralism, right? Because the idea that, Bernie had to do those things, otherwise he wouldn't even have been allowed to participate in the process ultimately, shows you how bourgeois electoralism will sort of strip any revolutionary potential. And if you're playing that game, then you won't even be allowed to operate outside the bounds of, what they consider acceptable, right?
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. They essentially didn't allow him. There's still speculation here that, it was, deliberately rigged against him. And, they went to court and said, oh, we don't have to make the primary process fair in any sense. They went to court in that and won that. So yeah, like you said, like bourgeois electoralism will not work in necessitating the change that needs to occur, the actual revolution that needs to occur to bring about a socialism. It just will not work, and it hasn't worked time and time and time again throughout the history of American politics.
Definitely. And just in case there are any sock dems listening, you have to understand that, within the United States it would be the Democratic Party, right? But the Democratic Party is ultimately a graveyard for revolutionary potential, right? Or the Labour Party in the UK is ultimately the same thing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I believe we're seeing that again as we transition from this administration, the Trump administration, the Trump regime, to the Biden regime. The Biden administration, I believe, will continue to see the disparaging of the left. They're already doing it now. Like, he came so close because of socialism. He was seen too much as a socialist by key demographics or something like that. That's the lie that they're perpetuating, and that's what they're going to use to justify the further, erasing of progressive messaging like Medicare for all and G&D and et cetera, et cetera. The small reforms, like that's what people have to understand. Small reforms like that slightly threaten the wealth of the ruling class, they will shut down, through electoralism. It just simply won't work.
Definitely. And on the other side of that, before the, election, me and Shibby made predictions on, what would happen if Biden won, predictions, regarding ultimately US imperialism will continue, right? And I made these predictions saying that, within a Biden administration in the first 4 years, you will get probably another, coup attempt in, Bolivia or Venezuela or something. And I think on yesterday, it was yesterday on Twitter, I saw that, the next Secretary of State or something said that they were going to do exactly that, right? So I was like, yeah, of course. So that's...
I'm very scared for what this administration will do in terms of, its cooperation with the CIA and continuing to interfere with sovereign countries. That's essentially what we're going to see in the next 4 years. Just a lot more devastation, continuing of war and an increased aggression against China, and that's an increased aggression against the left. I'm using that as an analogous term, but people who consider themselves against against the U.S. imperialism, against capitalism, etc. They're definitely going to turn fire on them as well.
Would you think that it's fair for us to say that this confusion about socialism being when the government does stuff, this confusion that socialism's for the rich and not the poor, or that socialism is when you're in the military, are all of these intentional things, do you think, in order to confuse the masses?
I think it's very, well, I wouldn't say that, some people are saying these in good faith, some people are just saying because they've been misinformed, but the posturing of that, I believe is somewhat deliberate, and it's also like kind of inevitable when you don't have that, sort of baseline information, when you're not talking about class consciousness. So I think it's partly deliberate, but partly just because of the lack of education and a lack of exposure to history in regards to socialist projects and revolutions around the world.
So I think another reason why this is perpetuated is also a kind of interpassivity to me, and also a capitalist realism mindset where nothing can exist outside of capitalism. So consequently you can have socialism within capitalism, and they think that they can think that they've got socialism in a capitalist country, or they think that Norway, socialism could be in Norway, for example, or Switzerland or whatever it is, but it's still within capitalism because they can't get out of the capitalist mindset that there's a world that isn't capitalism, or there's things in the world where capitalism doesn't exist. So, I mean, it's obvious that socialism is not when the government does stuff, because we live under capitalist governments and you can't have socialism and capitalism together. It's fundamentally not possible. Like matter and antimatter like coexisting together or being like dead or alive at the same like time. Like it's literally insane. Like these concepts are insane. And so whether it is people being like into passive, thinking that they're trying to do a good thing, moving towards socialism, because like this party that's, even though it's like, what is a social democrat or who, I don't care what they call themselves, but like these parties to serve the purposes to the people who want to be like into passive, where they just want to be the ones who do the recycling and then think that like global warming's just completely like over, when obviously there's a lot more that we all need to do and it's systemic change. But you know what I'm saying? What I'm getting at is like, it's my frustration towards these social democrat parties and the liberals within them. At the same time, in the same way that, you know, Barack Obama's presidency could have radicalized you, we do not know what's going to be the best in the long run. All we do know is we do have to tell people to start looking like towards Marxism or like towards like dialectical materialism or whatever, because people are being fed bullshit. And if you're living your life after being fed bullshit, well, you're going to have a life that's shit.
I mean, it goes back to...
You know, you've got them philosophers out there and all that, but that's what I'm coming out with. But
it goes back to what we were saying earlier, right? About like capitalism stripping the revolutionary potential from everything. And this is exactly what that redefinition of the word socialism is, right? It's definitionally stripping the revolutionary potential from the word, right? No longer does it mean, you know, a complete overturning of the system. It just means going back in time 50 years to like FDR days, right?
This is the core of why I wanted to do that episode, because this isn't something that the left is confused about. This is something that affects the right as well, because even those ones who are proper right wing, all of these like Republicans and all that, and the ones who hate their government and all that because they don't want to be tread on and all that bullshit. You know, these flipping Tories as well, who want less government control. It's that capitalist realism. It's been like stripped of revolutionary potential. Control is socialism, and they hate socialism as well. So you get people on the left and the right who are thinking that socialism is when the government does stuff. Peak reactionaries, and people are living their lives like under a bourgeois morality, so that they're living their lives in the same way that, like, as if like Trump's consciousness was in people's body, like that's how people are living their lives, that like fed like neurologically to be like capitalist in society. And like, we're not even exaggerating here. That's like the most messed up thing about all of this.
And you know, even if there are people out there that think, you know, because you always get the saying, you know, Bernie would have won. The implication there is that, you know, Bernie, not only would he have won, but his administration would actually have been better. But if you'd actually been following, you know, who the Biden camp has been picking to staff the administration, a lot of them were coming from the, you know, Bernie campaign. You know, Faz Shakir, I think he was definitely on Bernie's campaign. He might even have been his campaign manager, who's now going to work in the Biden administration. So, you know, people really like to set up this idea that, like, you know, Bernie is the solution, or he's the vaccine, or he's, okay, poor turn of phrase, I guess, but he's the you know, the thing that's going to end Biden and shut him down and everything. But just in case there are people out there that don't actually understand why social democracy isn't the answer, it's because it doesn't deal with the class issues within society. Like, if all you want to do is raise taxes slightly, or even a lot, right? I think under JFK there was something like 90% at the top income bracket. But even if you leave the class divisions and the classes in place, you know, the bourgeoisie still are the political class that control everything, so they can just reverse all of those reforms that you've managed to win over time. And if you don't believe me, that's literally what's happened. If you look at the FDR days through to today, what happened? You know, implemented electorally will just be destroyed by, you know, the next president. Ultimately, all they have to do is sign a couple executive orders and it's gone. It's all just gone.
It just literally, it takes the piss, because it's the exact same in the UK. Like everything that you just said, it could be like attributed to like Corbyn. People are out there with like roses in the Twitter, like I stand with Corbyn. He's not even in the picture. You know, he's not even like an MP or nothing, is he? Hasn't he been like flipping fired? Like what are people talking about? Standing with somebody who's been fired when the struggle's out there with the masses. It burns me head out, Ryan. Like,
yeah, that is kind of a different topic. We can talk about that because I've been wanting to talk about that for ages if you want. But like, honestly, like I'm not in favor of the Keir Starmer wing of the party, obviously, but he did the correct thing. Right? So he purged the party of all people who oppose him. Now, I don't agree with, you know, because he's the Blairite wing of the party, right? He's the Nancy Pelosi wing of the Labour Party in the UK.
Who's purging all parties?
He did. Keir Starmer did, right? He purged members of the party. That's what he did to Jeremy Corbyn, right? He kicked them out of the party and either to other people, right? So he was correct to purge people if you look at it tactically, right? Obviously, I don't agree with his politics, but that's exactly what Jeremy Corbyn should have done. He should have purged all of people. I was
about to ask, why didn't Corbyn purge people?
Because he won't do it. Because they don't play like that, right? But that's what he should have done. He should have purged all Blairites from the party.
I wouldn't even stop with the party.
Well, how would you don't have any control over people outside of the party, right? Like, you can't purge people from the party that aren't in the party.
If I got to the point where I was at the head of the party, believe me, at that point I would have enough pull. I'd be purging all kinds. And I'm exaggerating for entertainment, obviously.
But yeah, he should have done that for sure. I mean, I know we're sort of off topic now, but he is the social, democratic leader within the Labour Party in the UK. Jeremy Corbyn is essentially UK Bernie Sanders.
Oh yeah, and there's the same criticisms that you're saying about what Jeremy Corbyn should have done, and he just wasn't that kind of guy to make those kind of measures. And I do say the same thing about Bernie, what the Democratic Party did to him throughout the Democratic primaries, and things that he should have done. He should have been a little bit more meaner in his messages, or actually went on the attack instead of just taking shit from everybody that was to the right of him. And it was very poor posturing, I think, on his part. He just wasn't that. He was never going to be that candidate to do that. And I do believe it's kind of silly to make the claim that he would have actually won the presidency and done the things that his administration would have intended to do, especially in light of the cabinet picks that Biden is doing, people from his very own campaign going into that neoliberal administration.
And then to go on and expect these people to bring about any kind of socialism is, again, just stretching the imagination even further. I was just wondering, have you got anywhere in mind where people can go to find out what socialism would look like, or like what socialism with their country's characteristics would look like? Because people need vision. I think that one reason people can turn into conspiracy theories and all these liberal ideologies is because maybe they're not exposed to a vision of what the future could like. Have you got any ideas where people could go to get that vision? I know it's not an easy question, but is there any thoughts on that out there, people?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it is a very loaded question because, as you said, it depends on the material conditions of that country. The USSR did not look like Cuba. Cuba did not look like Vietnam. Vietnam had, looked nothing like the DPRK. These countries all, came to be attempted these socialist projects, successful in these socialist projects, entirely dependent on material conditions that called for it. Russia was merging out of the Tsarist regime. Cuba was emerging, from a dictatorship that was backed by the United States. And I think we need to first define, or try to define, or at least, within the confines of what socialism is first and foremost, before people start, looking, to see what socialism looks like in their respective countries. Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, let's first say that, socialism is the transition away from away from capitalism to communism. It is the vehicle. It is, the mode of transportation to get there. Right. As I would like to say, that's the baseline. I think we can all, agree on that as its transitionary period. And, after that, we should, look to see what, these countries are doing to try to build socialism, which, let's start first with the collectivization of the means of production. And not to disparage, I never meant to disparage social safety nets. That was something that, people, brought about, like, what are you saying that, healthcare and free education are these bad things? No, they're certainly not. And these were things that were written about by Marx and Engels, that needs to be in a socialist project, like a robust social safety net of some sort. But that can't just stand alone by itself. That's why Norway and Denmark, that's why those places are not socialist. And I would also go to say that there is direct accountability in this worker state. As of right now, we live in a dictatorship with the bourgeoisie. There's no direct accountability between the people that are, working within the confines of the state and, the rest of us, the proletariat. In a dictatorship with the proletariat, there would be, a direct accountability to the people. They would be answering to the people that, that they serve directly. There would be heightened democracy. There would be an actual sense of democracy for once, and also there would be a mantra of, to each according to their labor, as opposed to, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, as we would see in communism. But to each according to their labor should be, and also another, characteristic of a socialist project, something that's in the works. So with that being said, what would that look like in their respective countries? As of today, as of in 2020, well, what are y'all doing to move away from capitalism? Are you trying to build dual power within the system? Well, not within the system, but, outside of the system, rather. And is that, is your primary goal to the end abolition of the classes, to move to a classless, stateless society? That is a very loaded question that you asked me. I honestly am about it.
Did you prepare something on paper, or did you just come up with that off the top of your head?
I wrote a couple of bullet points, but I was hoping that along, my little spiel that I would come to a conclusion. I still don't have that.
No, there's a lot there though, because he came back with a big answer for a big question, and there's a load there that you could speak about.
I actually think the only correct answer to that question is ultimately I don't know, right? Because I don't think any of us can see into the future ultimately. And I just want to drive your point home even further about, the it not being a real democracy thing, right? I think there was a study that came out from Princeton a couple years back showing that, public opinion has zero impact on public policy. It has zero impact on the laws that get passed, right? Mm-hmm. So, people want to uphold these systems like the UK or the US as, democratic. But if nothing that comes out of them is what people are asking for, then, this is definitionally not democracy, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's another thing that people, think that happens in a communist, society and a socialist state, that there's no democracy. No, there is plenty of democracy. This is moving towards a true democracy. And the fact that they've, so cleverly and so effectively, parroted the opposite of that is just a testament to how, effective anti-communist propaganda has spread from the Cold War on. It's pretty incredible, I think, that people still have that misconception that it's somehow less democratic in a dictatorship of the proletariat than a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie.
Definitely.
I mean, people just don't even realize that, all of the rights that we do have were, really insanely fought against over hundreds of years. And, I mean, come on, people just need educating.
Just the labor rights movement in the United States, people don't understand enough, right? People don't understand, the roots of the IWW, or they don't understand things like, people generally have no understanding of those kind of historical, like the Battle of the Bulge or anything. It's not Battle of Bulge, Battle of Blair Mountain.
Yeah. That people don't know about that.
Definitely.
And here in the United States anyway, people seem to have this idea that there's no revolutionary zeal in the South. There absolutely was. There's a long tradition of that. And, the fact that Battle of Blair Mountain isn't taught in schools. It's just another example of the deliberate erasure of a class struggle here in the United States.
There's also a text that we touched on towards Soviet America. I think that's what it was called.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. I've only read a few extracts from there, but that's like incredible work. Like, if you're from the United States, that's definitely important. A large proportion of our listeners are from the United States, so I always insist that people should go away and read that. But again, a lot of it comes down to us. A lot of it comes down to what the people around us want, and nobody knows what the people want better than us. We can always ask them. And because there's never been a socialism or communism in our country before, it does require a lot of vision, a lot of thinking, and it's going to take a lot of hard work. But we're going to goddamn do it because we've got no choice unless we want extinction for an entire species on this planet and untold suffering before that happens. So where can people find you? Where can they follow you? Have you got any projects that you want people to check out and like support? Because, now is the time to do so. And we'll also ask everybody else to do so. We'll have it in our show notes too.
Yes, please. So you guys can find me at Anti-Homeowners Association or Anti-HOA, all lowercase on Twitter. That is my primary way of being contacted. And at the very top, I have right now a COVID-19 relief GoFundMe that's being sponsored by La Suya, or, the Student Undocumented Youth Alliance here in Savannah. And that group regularly gives a financial assistance along with food to the undocumented families that are here in the Savannah area. And we are doing this especially in light of the horrific crimes that were committed in Osceola, Georgia, in Irwin County Detention Center, where they were found to have been conducting unlicensed hysterectomies on detained women. And that city, or that little town rather, is only maybe about a couple hours south of here. So that is the work that they do. I frequently volunteer with them. And we still have, we have a $20,000 goal, and it's been up since about June, and we're only maybe half the way there. And, anything helps if you would be so kind. We're still going through some very tough times here in Savannah. And the people are still struggling with evictions and with unfair housing practices that are here. And of course, we don't want any more of our siblings to be transported over to that detention center. So that's really all I've got to say as far as plugging in anything. But do check us out.
Yeah, boss. Sounds like you're doing amazing work out there.
Yeah, for sure. So I was talking to Shibi about this before, about, both your actual Twitter @name and your, I don't know what the other name's called, that stage name or whatever. It's definitely a running theme here, especially through like healthyarts.org as well. So Shibi, I was talking to him before, and he didn't seem to understand why or what that was about, like anti-lawn action. So I guess maybe you should talk to him a little bit about like the creation of the suburbs. I'm kind of feeling like there's a little...
Isn't that about like, instead of having like crappy grass in your garden, isn't it about can actually grow food? I've heard that like some people don't want to do that because they think that like there's pollution like on it from the cars nearby, but like I'm all for it, because instead of having just shitty grass in your garden, you can actually grow like actual like proper food, like loads of food in your garden. Is that what anti-lawn action is about, or is there something deeper to that? And I'm just being naive, which is why Ryan's giggling.
It's like you could really do a whole episode.
Yeah, for sure.
But so Anti-Homeowners Association is definitely tied to anti-lawn action. Yes. It's very tongue-in-cheek, but at the very end of the day, it's promoting healthier practices of landscaping, and because that also has a very long history of classism, of environmental issues, and just degrading nature of suburban sprawl. And you were asking about the suburbs. Actually, Homeowners Association started building up because they wanted to exclude certain ethnicities from the suburbs that were, being created around, the 1940s and 50s. So that was their primary purpose, to put in really harsh regulations to exclude certain classes and races of people. That's what it was from the very beginning. And to this day, they still have very, very draconian practices.
Segregated societies. No, we've still got it in our city today. Like the toxic, Wavertree, Dingle areas are all segregated, and we've got basically all the non-white people, and it's insane. you know, because God forbid different coloured people live next door to each other, because we might actually all just start to get used to it. And once people are used to it, then we might actually realise, hold on, it's not this certain coloured person who's causing all the problems in the world, it's the flipping government, it's the ruling class. Honestly, it's always pissed me off, and I've always like mentioned it on the podcast because it's real, and like I'd love for people to go out there and think about it where they live. Have you got segregated like societies with different ethnicities in like non-white areas, and really be confident to say that of course they have. And at the same time, people grow food, not lawns. It only makes sense. People are hungry out there, just normalise growing food instead of buying it from like your local Tesco or your local supermarket. Just like grow it ourselves. But at the same time, that right, my mum was planting flowers when we first like moved into this house. It was like a new build house, and she was planting flowers in her front garden, and as she dug up like the grass, like just a little bit, just below it was like a medium size, like 8-piece chicken nugget meal from McDonald's box, where the builders had been building it and then just thrown it on the grass before they put the grass on and the mud. How disgusting is that?
For sure.
Isn't that cheeky?
I don't know why as well, but like homeowners associations for some reason in my mind are like a textbook definition of one of the evils of colonialism. And I know that sounds like a really strange thing to say, but like the idea that the Americans broke from the Europeans, like settled that land, like genocided Native Americans just to build homes on it, and then like their own little weird social groups to exclude other social groups. It's just, the whole thing is strange to me. Like for some reason homeowners associations really are like the epitome of, you know, settler colonialism for me. They just scream it, and I'm not sure why, but they've just always been that association in my mind.
Oh, I think you're absolutely correct. I really have nothing else to add to that. That is a very, spot on observation. And, you know, even the practices that they brought over, you know, from Europe over to the colonies, going back to even just lawn culture, you know, a lot of it was, you know, decadence. They transported over here. You know, that was all very, you know, deliberate.
Definitely.
You know, lawn culture, you know, only people who had wealth, you know, who people had land, you know, had lawns, and, you know, they had enslaved people, you know, tending to it. So yeah, it's a very, very, very long.
Oh my God.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it's very much tied into neocolonialism, I believe. So.
Oh my God.
And then they also like sold the dream of that land back to the proletariat in the version of the American dream, right? Like the white picket fence and the lawn, right? Like that was the...
Yeah, there was efforts to sell this idea, like you know, advertisements upon advertisements about lawnmowers and how, you know, a well-kept lawn made you a better person, made you a model society. So yeah, there's again, y'all could do a whole episode on this.
Yeah, we probably should.
Yeah, no, I'm getting loads of ideas and thoughts here because it's real, it's deep. I've always being pissed off at the idea of proletarians being content with this tiny 2 meters of fucking 2 inches grass and fucking a little 3 meters back garden with like fucking 3 centimeter thick wood fence around their back garden, like the size up to their eyeballs or their forehead in their back garden, separating them from like 12 other houses with like a back garden, and there's no privacy whatsoever, but people are content with these small, and it's like at the same time to a lot of people this is like their only like experience with nature. You know, most of our trees in like cities are planted intentionally at like the side of the roads, and I think that a lot of it is like what you might be getting at as well with the lawn things is just a detachment from just the real world, and at least having some attachment with it again, like where we can in cities. And I don't know, it just really pissed me off, like the conditions that we live in like our hamster cages that we call houses, that people are proud to slave like 40 years of their life over, and you know, or risk fucking death and poverty, and you know, it's insane to me.
And they tell you, you know what the cool thing, well, not the cool thing, but they tell you this is what's going to happen to communism, right? Like you're going to have this very small space to yourself. You're not going to have any
exactly,
to yourself. Like you can't do what you want, but it's already happening right now under capitalism, even more so. People being squeezed into these small living spaces with very limited things that they can actually do on their own home. You can't even, the HOA I live in, I can't grow a garden from my front lawn. I can't grow food for myself. That's insane.
Like mad though, yeah. Like you learn these things like even as like a kid. I remember like being on holiday in like Turkey or something. There was bananas growing on trees and like I wanted one and like I was being told like, no, you can't have them because it's illegal, you're stealing. And I was like a kid, I was like, are you fucking mad? I was like, this is like planet Earth, motherfucker, what are you on about? It's stealing, it's growing on a tree. To think that like a human being could have food growing out there and I was probably a little bit hungry at the time, and I was a little bit peckish and I just couldn't eat this banana, but it just what kind of planet are we living on?
Do you know what that reminds me of so hard? I think like I can't remember what book this is. I have all these like thoughts and stuff like of stuff I've read. I can just never remember where I've read them, right? So Marx tells this story that's literally like that, right? It's like, I think it was in winter in Germany, the people used to go to the forest and gather firewood so they could make it through the winter. Except one winter, what happened is that land was sold off and it was, privately bought by someone. So then when they went to gather, the firewood for the winter, obviously they weren't able to. And the police stopped them and like tons of people died that winter just because, that forest was bought by like some private whatever dude and he stopped them collecting firewood. And as a result of that, just like all of those people died.
But that was in Marx's time. What we're looking at it today is
still capitalism, dude.
What we look at it today is natives and indigenous people being forced off the island because Mark Zuckerberg bought it.
Oh yeah, Hawaii, right?
Never mind a forest or the woods. Mark Zuckerberg's out there and all these other millionaires, billionaires are buying islands in this place and the local inhabitants. That's the extreme that we're living in today.
Yeah, Kim Kardashian was just mocked on Twitter not that long ago for doing that, remember? You might not. Mm-hmm. When she like went to her private island and brought all her friends over and she was talking about like, so it's been so hard on us. And she's got like an entire group of islands all to herself. It's just like, come on now.
Or something.
Yeah.
But even like, I was gonna like go back to the point that you made about getting bananas and you got in trouble for that. There's anti-foraging laws here in the States, like where you can't get food off of quote unquote public property owned by the city or something like that. For example, yeah. Like,
aren't there also laws that you like can't collect rainwater and things like that?
Yeah, there's also laws like that in certain areas that you can't collect rainwater.
What?
Wow.
You can't, get a rain barrel and get what comes out of the sky. You can't do that. That's stealing or something.
Right. Wow.
But it's it's hard to wrap my mind around. Frankly, it's inhumane, is what it is. Like, at the end of the day,
it also just brings home the point I'm always saying about like the law's not
as human.
Yeah, also, but like the law's not a function of justice; it's a function of power, right?
Fucking oh my god! Well, Tripp, let us just say thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed it all the time. We really do appreciate your time, your thoughts on this matter. It has been important to get this message across to the people. I would normally just say sign off with some peace, love, and solidarity, but can we get a little special performance, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I am all for it.
What's our band name?
We are now all anti-law action. Let's go.
We're all anti-law action. Let's go. Socialism's not when the government does stuff. 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 Socialism is an ideology. Different struggle between the pros and the bourgeoisie. We gotta see the means to establish socialism. Otherwise, social democracy. Socialism's not when the government does stuff. Socialism's not when the government does stuff. Socialism's not when the government does stuff. Socialism's not when the government does stuff.
Public schools.
They're not socialism.
Gross.
That's not socialism either.
Firefighters.
Not socialism.
Welfare.
Not socialism.
Socialism is not when the government does stuff. Socialism is not when the government does stuff. Socialism is not when the government does stuff. Socialism is not when the government does stuff.
Woo! Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
I put on an American accent.
I do not think that comes through over your Scouse one.
That was extremely fun.
Definitely.